All right, I'm going live, unannounced, and it's the middle of the day, totally different time from when I usually do these, but I just felt like doing it. It was relatively quiet here when usually there's construction. So, yeah, let's do this. I have no idea who's going to show up for this, and I'm going to just talk about the. Make sure my audio is on. Okay, we got audio. That's good. Yeah, I'm going to do a quick reading, or maybe not quick. I don't know. I never know how long these are going to run, because if people show up and they have questions, I'll do readings on that too. But yeah, I'm going to look at the protests that have been erupting in China over their zero COVID policy, and much at odds with a lot of the world COVID policy. So, yeah, if anyone has any other questions relating to China or anything else in the world, or any personal readings, just let me know in the comments. But otherwise, I'll just crack into it and we'll look at China. If you're watching this later, well, if you're watching this at any time, whenever you're watching this, let me put up my reminder that I do personal readings. If you want a personal reading, you can always contact me directly on SuperPeer. Use this code through December 31st for 15% off. Only good through December 31st. I don't know if that's when you make the reservation or if it's when you book it. I don't know, but go check it and try it. Try the coupon, give 15% off, and you can have a private reading with me on anything you want to know about in your life, in the world's life, whatever you want to know. All right, it's in the information too for the video. So, anyways, let's get to no, that's not it. Let's get to reading about China's zero COVID policy. So, I've also been meaning to do a reading on Iran, and their not COVID policy, but the protests that have erupted. Basically, I want to see, like, are these protests going to lead to any lasting change? Is there going to be any alterations in government or government policy? That's what I'm mainly looking at. So yeah, with China, let's take a look. Let me take a look first at the general energy of the protesters and then of the Chinese government. So for the protesters, energy, I'm seeing I want to know, like, what is their, like, how far are they willing to go? Will these protests get extremely violent? Will they continue for months, or will they end in a week or two? What is the overall energy of the protesters? I'm guessing this video will not be shown in China at all, but yeah. All right. Okay, so I'm seeing with the protesters an Eight of Pentacles card, and Eight of Pentacles is a very steady card. It's not a card that's basically willing to work on things and steadily change things. So I don't see the protesters stopping anytime soon. On the other hand, I don't see them getting extremely violent unless provoked. This is a card that on its own is pretty gentle and quiet and willing to work behind the scenes, more just a steady rate of progress that isn't going for violence. Violence isn't its main intention, but it will react if need to. As a Pentacles card, it is very steady and driven, but it's like I said, it's not fiery like a Wands card that's gonna attack on its own. So that's what I'm seeing for the protesters. Let's look at China, the Chinese government. What is their general stance at the moment? Because that'll determine how these two interact. Oh, that came out very fast. So I'm seeing with them, with the Chinese government, a King of Cups card. King of Cups is more emotional. It's an emotions card, and it feels like it's in control of its emotions, and so it's not immediately gonna lash out, but it knows what it wants. It's very clear about its desires and wishes. So in terms of how these two relate to each other, though, that Pentacles card and this, they kind of need each other in some ways. This is like water and this is like earth. The earth needs water. So just like the protesters, in a sense, they need the government, at least the Chinese government, to be a part of them to some degree. So they're not they don't want to totally cut themselves off, and I don't see these protests emerging into major physical conflict. I don't see that happening at this point. I'm not saying there won't be any physical conflict. I'm just saying that primarily the protesters will remain peaceful, and the Chinese government will allow limited protests to a degree. But like that King of Cups card feels like he is a king, and he is going to respond to what he feels is right. And if he feels that the protesters are stepping over the line, then he will act. But I don't see them acting on that initially. Let's see how long these protests are likely to occur. So let's say, is this, basically I want to know, like, is this going to be a long-term thing, or is this just a brief flare-up that's going to disappear in a few weeks? My intuition based on that Pentacles card showed up is that this could be very long term. But let's see. Looking to see how long these protests are likely to continue in China. Nothing coming up at the moment. Okay, here we go. So I'm seeing, another Pentacles card. So this doesn't surprise me. I think these protests will continue until there's a substantial change. As a King of Pentacles card, against that King of Cups card, two kings against each other is basically each side feels that they're right, and they're not easy. It's not easy to budge a king card. Those are very stubborn and self-righteous cards in a sense, so that I'm not seeing any major change with the protesters anytime soon, and I'm not seeing any major change with China and their policy. But let's see if we can expect any change in policy at any point. Let's say in the next 2 months, is there going to be any change in policy, in the zero COVID policy that is one of the strictest in the world with COVID measures and what is allowed. So let's see. Will there be any major change in zero COVID policy between now and the next 2 months? Let's say, by the end of January. Potential for change in the zero COVID policy between now and the end of January. And I'm seeing, okay, here we go. Interesting. I'm seeing a Five of Wands card. So I feel like the protesters will have some effect. Like there's going to be some slight change, some slight easing of restrictions between now and the end of January. This card is about somebody coming to the fore and achieving a higher state of influence and power. And I'm feeling like it is the protesters, not the Chinese government. So I would expect that by the end of January, some slight change. I don't think it's going to be a total easing of restrictions, but I think it's going to be, Chinese government being pragmatic about it and realizing that it's not like they're not quite in groove with the rest of the world's policies on COVID at the moment. So I think there will be a slight change. I think that's the main things I wanted to look at with these protests. So basically I looked at it and I saw that China and as a government doesn't really want to make a change, and the protesters, though, are very dedicated to protesting and continuing this protest. I'm not seeing any major escalation of violence, but I am seeing basically just a continuation of these protests. And I think by the end of January, we're going to see some slight change. Not a total renunciation of policy, but a slight change to the zero COVID policy. And it'll be a slight easing of restrictions by January, by the end of January. Yeah, so that's what I'm seeing. And if nobody else has any questions, I'll just wrap it up and call it a day. But I realize, though, for people that watch my viewings regularly, I didn't announce this one at all. I just wanted to do an impromptu event to see if anyone would show up, and not many people have, but that's okay. I'm glad I did this, and hope to see you in the next tarot reading. I do these all the time, so feel free to suggest something you want me to read on, and I will hopefully do it. And hope to see you then. Bye.